The courtroom smelled faintly of varnished wood and dust, the kind that had settled over decades of trials, verdicts, and shattered lives. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow across rows of benches filled with spectators, journalists, and a handful of soldiers in uniform. At the center of it all sat Maya Rios, back straight, hands folded in her lap, the pale cuffs of her shirt disappearing under a navy blazer. She looked almost fragile, too slight for her age, too reserved, too quiet. The prosecutor had picked up on that immediately. Helpless, he had called her, pausing for effect, letting the word hang heavy in the air. The defense attorney bristled but said nothing. The judge adjusted her glasses. The jurors shifted uneasily in their seats. But Maya didn't move. She simply stared ahead, unblinking, as though waiting for the storm to pass. For weeks, the trial had unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play. The government insisted that Maya's actions in a distant Warzonia, what she had done, and more importantly what she had refused to do, had endangered an entire operation. They painted her as cowardly, negligent, and unfit for the uniform she had once worn. But beneath the legal jargon and official documents lay another truth, one hidden so deeply that only whispers existed. Few dared speak it aloud. Maya had been something else before all of this, someone else. The prosecutor paced now, hands clasped behind his back, voice sharp. This witness was nothing more than a liability, helpless in the face of danger, helpless when her team needed her most, helpless when every second mattered. A ripple ran through the spectators. The word repeated itself in their minds: a helpless, helpless, helpless. Still, Maya didn't flinch. It wasn't the first time she had been underestimated. Years ago, before the trial, before the accusations, before her name was dragged through headlines and politics, she had stood on the edge of a tarmac under a burning desert sun. Dust swirled around her boots, the rumble of aircraft engines shaking the ground. Back then, she wore fatigues and a headset, her face streaked with sweat and grit. Her team had been preparing for insertion in hostile territory, minimal intelligence, no margin for error, and she, the one most overlooked, had carried a secret. Not a weapon, not a dossier, a call sign, one that was known across shadowy channels, whispered in enemy bunkers, etched into the memory of commanders who would never admit how much they depended on it. But that was the past, buried under silence. Until the courtroom. Tell us again, the prosecutor said mockingly, what exactly you contributed in that mission. Besides standing by, her defense attorney rose. Objection is sustained. The judge cut in. Counselor, watch your tone. The prosecutor smirked. Apologies, Your Honor. Let me rephrase. Miss Rios, is it true that during Operation Sentinel you failed to provide assistance when your unit was under fire? A murmur filled the room. The jurors leaned forward. Maya lifted her gaze slowly, her voice even. That's not true. Not true? The prosecutor's tone dripped with disbelief. So you claim you weren't helpless? That you what? Somehow changed the course of events? Her lips curved slightly. Not a smile, something colder. Yes, it had been chaos. Fire ripping across the ridge, tracer rounds screaming through the night, her unit pinned down in the valley with nowhere to go, radios jammed, reinforcements miles away. The lieutenant's voice had cracked over the comms. We're not gonna make it. But then another voice had come, hers. Calm, steady, utterly certain. Stand by. This is Echo 7. The call sign, just 2 syllables and a number, but enough to freeze the lieutenant mid-sentence, enough to shift the entire mood of the trapped unit. They knew what it meant, or at least, what it had once meant. Within minutes, support thundered in from angles nobody expected. Routes cleared, targets neutralized. The team pulled out, battered but alive. But that wasn't written in the official report. The operation had been classified, twisted, and redacted until nothing but shadows remained. Back in the courtroom, the prosecutor laughed, dismissive. Echo 7? What is that supposed to mean? Some nickname? A bedtime story? This time, Maya did smile. It was small, restrained, but it carried a weight that sent a chill through the rows of uniforms in the gallery. Some of them knew. Their jaws tightened, eyes narrowing as the memory resurfaced. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Echo 7 wasn't a story. It was the call sign that ended the warlord's reign in Karish province. It was the call sign insurgents feared enough to abandon strongholds overnight. It was the call sign whispered in interrogation rooms when men who swore they'd never break spilled everything they knew. Echo 7 was me. The courtroom froze. The prosecutor's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time since the trial began, he looked less like a predator circling prey and more like a man realizing he had stepped into a minefield. Because Echo 7 wasn't just a code name, it was legend. A ghost in the system, a force never officially acknowledged but always respected. The defense attorney rose. Your Honor, may I request the court acknowledge the relevance of this revelation? The judge's gavel tapped once. Sharply. Proceed, but carefully. Maya turned to the jury. Her voice carried no arrogance, only clarity. They called me helpless because the truth is inconvenient, because admitting what I was or what I did would unravel the narrative they've built. But the reality is simple. That mission didn't fail because of me. It succeeded because of me. One of the soldiers in the gallery shifted forward, his medals catching the light. His face was lined with years of service, his eyes hard as stone. Slowly, deliberately, he raised a hand to his temple and saluted. The sound of shuffling boots followed it too. Then 3 more soldiers rising in silent acknowledgement. No words, just respect. The prosecutor sputtered. This is outrageous, but it was too late. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. The jurors stared at Maya not with doubt, but with awe. The spectators whispered her call sign like a forbidden prayer. Echo 7. The ghost had a face now, of course, revealing it wasn't without risk. Maya knew that. She had sworn never to speak the name in public, but the prosecutor had left her no choice, and though the recognition felt vindicating, it also brought back memories she had buried of long nights listening to coded transmissions, of pulling strings invisible to anyone else, of lives saved and lives lost because of a decision only she could make. Helpless, number, haunted, always. By the next morning, the media was ablaze. Headlines screamed about the mystery of Echo 7. Analysts debated whether the government had knowingly tried to discredit one of its own. In court, the prosecutor's case unraveled faster than anyone could patch it. Witnesses who had spoken against her suddenly faltered, their testimonies shaky under cross-examination. Documents that once painted her as negligent were now questioned as deliberate distortions. The judge's patience thinned. It appears, she said finally, that what was presented to this court does not align with the full truth. The jury deliberated only 2 hours. When they returned, the verdict rang clear, not guilty. When Maya stepped out of the courthouse, the crowd surged, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. She ignored them all. Instead, she walked with quiet dignity, the same way she had carried herself in court, the same way she had walked across that desert tarmac years ago. She didn't need to explain herself further. The call sign had spoken for her. Still, as she moved through the crowd, she heard it whispered again and again, Echo 7. She wondered how long it would take before the whispers became myths again, until her name was swallowed by secrecy once more. Part of her wanted that. She had never sought glory, only truth. But another part of the soldier buried beneath years of silence felt a flicker of something else. Not pride, not vindication, simply recognition that, for once, the world had seen her not as helpless, but as what she truly was. The storm had ended.